Welcome to the Noble Ape podcast, Ape Reality. I'm Tom Barbalet, and this is currently being recorded live on TalkShoe, yes. Following Biota Live and Model Rail Radio, I've decided to start recording Ape Reality on TalkShoe. This evening there won't be any callers and there won't be any discussion through the chat. I'm actually sitting downstairs in my library recording this evening, but I thought, as it's been a while since I last recorded an Ape Reality and there was so much stuff to discuss, I'd just take the telephone downstairs, sit in the library, and think a little bit about what's been going on with Noble Ape recently. Thankfully, mainly for your benefit, I have some written notes here, so I do have some topics that I'd like to discuss. But obviously, Biota Live has continued. I think this is the third year of doing Biota Live in the format with regards to the kind of call-in and the chat room and these kind of things. And the last episode that was recorded was Biota Live 61, which is probably the most controversial Biota Live recorded to date. The discussion, let's just call it that, between William R. Buckley and myself continued for probably 3 days following the podcast. Liz Swan and Dick Gordon were involved as well in minor roles. But we didn't really come to any consensus, unfortunately. So what you hear in Biota Live 61 kind of continued on. But it does raise a number of interesting points with regards to the whole Biota Live format, and particularly my own kind of time and kind of time-benefit analysis associated with doing Biota Live. I'd like to change the format a little bit this year to perhaps raise slightly more controversial topics, but also move the community in a direction which I'm not really sure whether the community is ready to or interested in being moved in, but from things like Show 61, we will certainly find out. And what's interesting is Liz Swan's involvement, because she's really turning out to be someone who is obviously an active participant in the artificial life community, and it's wonderful to have someone else who's also working towards particular goals in the artificial life community. It looks like there will be an artificial life subconference in Salt Lake City in 2011, which would be a wonderful opportunity for me to meet a number of the folk that I talk with in Biota Live, and possibly also become Biota 5. Which would be an interesting opportunity to meet folk, and possibly also the first opportunity I've had to speak in public since about 2003. It's quite ironic through these podcasts that they really don't give me the opportunity to speak in public, but they are some kind of public speaking in some regard. So Biota Live continues on from strength to strength. Because my wife is starting a course, I will be recording all my podcasts on Saturdays for the near future at least. So I'll start recording an Ape Reality on Saturday, I'll record Biota Live on Saturday, and I'll also record Model Rail Radio on Saturday. And Model Rail Radio is actually turning out to be quite an interesting project. We've had 4 callers so far, and Chris Abbott is my active co-host. In fact, really, I'm the co-host to Chris Abbott. But it's a wonderful opportunity to move the Biota Live format in a slightly different direction, still with regards to kind of eclectic hobbies. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the rework of the original manuals. And for folks familiar with the original manuals, I produced them in, I think, 2005 for Cafe Press. They had originally been released with the Noble Ape Simulation, and the last time they were officially released was on the Noble Ape CD-ROM Isle of the Apes. And I did quite a bit of reformatting and also re-edited the spelling on the original manuals, so it now has US spelling. And moved the manuals from Cafe Press to Lulu.com, and LULU.com, amazing store. I mean, basically it takes the publishing part of Cafe Press and moves it into a format that then enables you to sell on Amazon. Sell on Amazon and look like regular books, basically. So I'm very impressed with Lulu. I'm going to be moving a number of texts onto Lulu in the near future, and whilst I'm still pursuing academic publication, the ability to have something out there and at the right price, which is really critical, makes me think that I'll certainly be using Lulu for, certainly a lot of my historical publishing. I mean, I've written a lot over the past 20-odd years. And one of the book projects that I'm working on currently with Lulu is a book. Actually, it's 2 separate books, which I'm putting together in a collection called Field of Chaos. And some background history to this, because I really haven't talked too much about my kind of writing or general intellectual development prior to the creation of Noble Ape. And a large portion of that is because Well, I was relatively young even when I started developing Noble Ape. I was 19 at the time. But from age about 15, I wrote copious quantities of text. And this was a period of my life where what I really wanted to be was be an author. So over this period, I wrote 6 different books. And one of the first things I did when I discovered Lulu was gather together 4 of those books and print them out on Lulu in a relatively fat softcover publication. And the plan with that is to take 2 of these texts, which are actually temporally linked, and produce a publication on Lulu which will just represent that period of time. It's around the period of time where I was writing antiviral software, and I think kind of captures some of the elements of that period which I haven't really seen elsewhere. I mean, there's some fascinating stuff in terms of my experiences in Australia, and also with kind of bizarro, almost revolutionary organisations. I mean, obviously, since the start of the War on Terror, the narrative associated with these kind of organisations hasn't been particularly positive. But certainly the second text that I'm going to package together in the Field of Chaos release relates quite explicitly to one of these organisations and my own experience kind of wandering into that situation. So it'll portray an early history of my experiences, which hasn't really occurred through the Noble Ape development to date, and I think it'll just add to a elaborate tapestry in some regard. But I'm excited to get that up on Lulu as well, because it'll be offered relatively cheaply, and I'm also playing with a lot of the graphic design and just getting the look and feel of these things exactly right. And that's what I like about Lulu. I mean, the publications, the original manual, for example, in terms of just the initial publications, I'm seeing about $7 each. So having gone through a first iteration and edited up a copy relatively heavily with ink and re-editing points, the next version of the original manual, as it comes to me, will probably only need minor edits before it's ready to go. And then it will be launched on Lulu and Amazon, which will give the opportunity for folks, as you do multiple Amazon purchases. I'm not really sure how the listeners of Ape Reality deal with Amazon, but my background with regards to Amazon has always been to maintain a copiously long wish list, and then if I'm given gift certificates or these kind of things, or occasionally actually have a little money to spend at Amazon, I'll clump together a few of the wish list items. And certainly that's what I did over the holiday period this year. I cleaned out a bit of my wish list on Amazon. But it gives the opportunity for folks who are doing this with Amazon to also select a copy of the original manuals, and it will just be shipped with your other Amazon-related stuff. So I think it's it's a good opportunity to get folks connected with the early development of Noble Ape. And my interest also is possibly to offer it as I had up until relatively recently as a gift to folks, and also just a giveaway item. I used to do this with T-shirts through the Ape Reality podcast, but I think the original manuals still offer that kind of interest, and certainly it will be sufficiently cheap that I could print, 10, 15 copies and send them to academics and folks such as Larry Yeager, who have relatively small classes of artificial life interested folks in their, late teens and early 20s. So exactly the kind of people that I want to indoctrinate with regards to not only creating their own simulations, but also getting them thinking about the way I started developing Noble Ape. So continuing from the original manuals, obviously, I think in the last podcast I talked a little bit about the 2-window development, and that's continued quite interestingly enough Windows, and now I'm thinking about the Linux version. So that's going to take a little bit of time. But the development is going on. It's coming in the form of check-ins into Subversion, the SourceForge Subversion repository. But I really should do a release of the simulation in the near future, just because the one on the site is very out of date, and the source code has moved forward quite a bit since that was updated. So I'll probably do a Mac release and a Windows release in the near future. I think I'll probably utilize my Saturday mornings to do that, or certainly the time that my wife is at class as well, to do some serious Noble Ape related development, because there's been some lacking recently. But like I said, the 2-window source code is certainly there. So another project that I've been working on with the Noble Ape source code recently relates to brain compression. The Noble Ape brains are about 64K worth of data, and I wanted to see if I could write a compression algorithm to get that down to probably about a K worth of text. So already the compression ratio is going to be quite ambitious, and I didn't have much success at all. I tried various off-the-shelf algorithms, zip, these kind of things, and I could get it down to about a third of the brain size, which is still pretty big. I mean, if you assume you have maybe 100 Noble Apes running in a simulation and you're getting it down to a third compressibility, you're still dealing with about 20K, and this is 20 binary K. So even with the best kind of 64 bit, not 64-bit, but 64 character renditions, so it comes plain text, you're still dealing with a lot of additional data. And it was a failure, I've got to be honest. There was no positive light at the end of the tunnel with regards to brain compression. I realized quite early on that probably the best I was going to get, either with kind of traditional algorithms or even selective elements of brain compression, was probably going to be a third. And a third isn't good enough, unfortunately. I had considered potentially running deltas of the simulation and seeing if I recorded, for example, the last 60 interactions in the brain, with the brain simulating over that period of time, whether that would actually replicate what the output was, kind of affect of the degenerative element of the brain. But I haven't really pursued that much further. I don't think it would be a good one-to-one match. I think it would be an interesting approximation, but not actually something that would be useful. So the brain remains uncompressible in any meaningful form, and what that means in the short term is just that the ape brain isn't saved. I really should add that as an option, because I think the ape brain component and maintaining the ape brain component through the simulation is relatively critical. My thought is maybe do it as an external file next to the file that is saved. So you'd have your text save file plus the ape brain file, which would either be in 64-character binary representation, or alternatively maybe even a straight binary representation. But that's still on the to-do list. The way the brain's used and the way the brain is saved and maintained really doesn't lend itself currently to doing it as an output format. But I think as these things, particularly if it starts getting distributed, if the simulation is run over a number of processes and maybe a few processes maintain the same apes, there may be some benefit if you're saving like 10 apes' brains, for example, to do it in this format. Although, I mean, when I integrated Larry Yeager's Polyworld into the Noble Ape simulation, when I created the kind of sea monkeys in Noble Ape, the amount of data that they generate and the amount of data that Larry explicitly saves through Polyworld is quite extreme. I mean, over relatively short-term runs, you can end up with, I don't want to say tens of megabytes, but it certainly felt like that when I was actually executing, that there was a sufficient kind of growth in the amount of data that Larry was putting out of Polyworld. If I understand correctly, I think this has changed recently, so it may not be a case of the current instantiation of Polyworld that this is the case, but certainly when I was doing that integration, probably a calendar year ago, if you can go back to the earlier Ape Realities about a year ago, maybe I was talking about doing the sea monkeys in Noble Ape, but it had that kind of output. So that's about it with regards to my current Noble Ape development. I have resurrected some of the old Noble Ape music because, ironically, the music is the kind of liaising element with regards to these Field of Chaos writings and the contemporary Noble Ape simulation. So I went back through some of the early CDs which were never released. I have probably double the music that has ever been put out associated with Noble Ape, kind of stored on old CDs. Went back through those, did some remixes, did some playing with that. I don't know whether I'll be releasing that in any format. I may actually re-release some of the released Noble Ape music on CD through Lulu again, but it's still being decided. It's currently just taking up a bit of space on my hard disk, which isn't a problem in this day and age. So anyway, this has been a somewhat rambling, extended Ape Reality. If you like the new format, please let me know, because I'm always interested about how to put these things out in the easiest way possible. And maybe we'll do like an active chat room or something, because if there's a community out there associated with Noble Ape that would like to talk in real time on some of the topics that I've discussed, I'm more than happy to do that, particularly because the format seems to work with Biota, and it certainly works with Model Rail Radio, and why should Noble Ape be any different? So if you're interested in getting in contact, and if you'd like to see this Ape Reality format move to a live format, I don't even know what we'd call it, maybe Live Ape Reality or Ape Reality Live or something, please get in contact with me, tom@nobleape.com. I look forward to any correspondence on this, and yeah, I'm more than happy to move it to a live format. I think Ape Reality is still shown in iTunes, which probably makes me want to actually release some of these podcasts decently, on decent frequency, although I've been using that justification for the past couple of years now. So thank you very much for tuning into this podcast. Look forward to you tuning into the next podcast.